What do you want? Nigga, what do we want? We want you to run down there to that new condominium area and get down there and sing Madeo Madeo like you promised you would.
Hello, Black Hole. See this brother winning, man. A-R-E. Hey, look, what is your win, big? What is your win, big?
Well, hello there, love bugs. Hello there, bellas. If you have not already done so, please remember to like, share the Facebook, subscribe, and visit uptopbeauty.com. And if you are not already a part of this book club, please hit the Patreon link below and or the join button here on the YouTube. And for a small monthly fee of $5, you babies, yes, you can be privy to all the shenanigans before the YouTube gets it, if the YouTube gets it. Now, let's continue talking about Deliver Us from Temptation, the tragic and shocking story of the Temptations and Motown by the dude Tony Turner, who we lovingly call TT. That Diana Ross, David went on. Did I ever tell you about the time out on one of them old Motown tours? You know, remember the monococcoli buses? That Diana Ross, David went on. Did I ever tell you about the time out on one of them old Motown tours when I pulled the bitch aside and I said, listen, write the names down of the men on this tour whose DICKs you haven't sucked yet. Write that shit down. Because Diana Ross is always taking notes so that she can call back and tell the Barry Gordy, Barry, Mary Wilson over there trying to get close to the Eddie Kendricks. She know I fucked him before. We hollered like old school buddies. Scurrying around the dressing room in a fog was someone whom I knew. It was Judas, who had introduced himself to me 2 years earlier in Chicago as a very good friend of Eddie Kendrick. He was now apparently road manager of sorts for the former Temps. Also in the dressing room was the very striking Margaret, a dead ringer for the diva Nancy Wilson. She told me that she was now working with the former Temps' new management company. Margaret, I remembered from one of the early Motown picnics, had been a friend of Eddie's and David's and a fan of the Temptations from way back. It was she who had helped get David into treatment after Hall & Oates and who had put the former Temps together with the new management company. Margaret introduced me to Bob, the vice president of the company. Eddie interjected, Bob, this is the person you should hire to tour with your clients. He could make their hotel and travel arrangements and everything. Later that night, when I saw the Fleabag Times Square hotel into which the guys had been booked, I understood why Eddie wanted the company to hire me. They had it so beautifully worked out. It sounded perfect. The tone was, we know you poor, misguided superstars have been robbed. We are legit, and we are well connected. We are here to help you get back on your feet. But looking at Bob standing there looking meek like an older Pee Wee Herman in his brown polyester pants and his checkered knit polyester sports coat, I wondered how this man was going to help anyone get back on his feet when he couldn't help himself into a decent business suit. Red flag, burp, 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 ding, there's a problem here. It was like 4 shows in one. A group show plus solo shows by the 3 most powerful and individually well-known lead singers of the Temptations. Each of them had enjoyed a substantial solo career. Each had a different kind of charisma. Each had name power. David Ruffin's name was synonymous with shocking headlines. Eddie Kendricks meant cuteness and oozing charm. And handsome Dennis Edwards was known for powerful gospel-style singing. It was $1 million formula, if I ever saw one. By the time that performance was over, everyone in the audience, including myself, was exhausted and dripping with sweat. I can believe that. Ain't nobody put together this show, Dennis told me. We didn't have the money for anybody to script, stage, light, and costume the act. We got rehearsal and inexpensive motel space in Detroit, and we all just put the show together. A couple of days later, I took the early Metro liner with my new best friend, Margaret, to see the former Temps performing again in Philadelphia. David's son, David Ruffin Jr. Oh, my goodness. Oh, that poor David Ruffin Jr. I feel him being very insecure because according to the book, little Davy Ruffin wanted to be the best person that he could be for his father. But according to TT, little Davy Ruffin wasn't nothing but in the way. Okay. So for them to get him out of the way, they just hired him for security. All right. Eventually, I guess he still was in the way because they sent his ass home. What I understand, Davy Ruffin Jr. is the son of the woman who wrote the book about David Ruffin. He dogged her. Okay. Ooh, I heard that book was a whole bunch of bitterness. It seemed as if David just didn't know what to do with his son. And I sensed that although they were close, David Jr. wanted to get closer, but couldn't. Although I thought that David Jr. had begun to work hard and take his security position seriously, shortly thereafter, he was no longer on the road with his father. I, however, began to tour with the former Temps, having jumped right on the chain in the newly created role of second road manager. Early in July, they were working a private corporate job at a new luxury condominium townhouse development out in Long Island. Ooh, this story. Oh my God, these are some niggas here. That David and Dennis, they are niggas. Hold tight. The stage was actually a gazebo in the middle of a man-made lake, joined by a long romantic walkway to the shore. Bleachers had been set up on the other side of the lake for the audience. Dennis had left his latest wife at home in Dayton, Ohio, and was there with a rather rough-looking New York girlfriend who I immediately nicknamed the New York Doll, i.e. that crackhead bitch from New York. Eddie was there alone, as usual. He rarely mixed business and pleasure, and Bob was there representing the management company. David had not yet arrived. He was supposed to be flying in from Detroit, where he had been staying with his daughter, Nedra. Nedra called. She had taken David to the airport, dropped this ninja off right outside of the airport. Bye, Daddy. Have a good trip. But the ninja missed his flight. Okay, she dropped him off. He was on time for the flight, but the ninja missed his flight. You know why? Because his ass was round there scurrying around trying to find some He ran around Detroit trying to find Cracky. Okay, Nadra found out. She went to where he was, picked up her father, took his ass back to the airport so that he can get on the next flight. He missed that too. She had picked him up, taken him back to the airport, dropped him outside again, gone home, and of course, David had disappeared back to the drug den. But now it was almost showtime. It wasn't until we were in the dressing room minutes before showtime that Bob, Pee Wee Herman, stopped chomping on a piece of barbecue chicken, turned to me and said, "Tony, where's Dennis?" He with the crack whore. Meanwhile, the road manager was making trip number 3 to the airport with David's complete stage outfit ready for him to change into in the back of the limo. All we had on hand was the band, the background singers, Josie Short and Nate Evans and Mr. Eddie Kendricks, who, unlike Bob, did not panic. He called the hotel. Dennis did not answer his phone. The front desk informed Bob that Dennis had not left the hotel. "Tony," Eddie said, sounding cool as ice, "I have to start. The show must go on. The audience is far enough away that maybe they'll think Nate is David or Dennis. We'll get around it some way, but you get back to the hotel and get Dennis over here quick. I'm depending on you. I know you can do it. I snatched up Dennis's costume and went racing back with Bob, who knocked on the hotel room door. He said, Bob, Pee Wee Herman suit, was like this. Dennis, 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 it's me, Bob. Dennis, what's going on in there? Now, TT standing behind Bob going, that's not going to work, Bob. That's not going to work. You got to bang on the door. Dennis, baby, don't do this to me. Dennis, open the door. Open the door. Look, I told him, you have to bang on that door. You could smell the odor of crack coming outside the room. I knew Dennis used crack now and then, but had no idea it had become a problem. Bob kept on knocking for what seemed like 10 minutes. The door opened a bit. Dennis's face was trembling. His teeth were shifting around in his mouth. What do you want? Nigga, what do we want? We want you to run down there to that new condominium area and get down there and sing Madeo Madeo like you promised you would, motherfucker. Let me in. Eddie is over there doing the whole show by himself, and David is still between here and Detroit. I hope. I forced open the door, breaking the chain to find Dennis standing there, buck naked. The New York doll was sitting on the edge of the bed with the crack pipe. I dragged her out of the room, slammed the door, and got to work quickly, dressing Dennis Edwards' underwear, socks, jumpsuit, and makeup, hair, doing whatever I could to make him look totally tempting in a hurry. He gazed at himself. How do I look? How do I look? Fine, I told him. Now let's go. Now, another thing, okay. TT said that Dennis is like, I don't think I look good enough. Can you put some more makeup under my eyes? TT said he had to smack the shit out of him. Smack? Did you hear me when I told you that Eddie is down there singing by himself with two of the backup singers, hoping and praying that the audience don't realize that it ain't you, nigga? To my surprise, I slapped him across the face and screamed. Eddie's on that stage performing alone with Nate and Josie. You look great. Let's go. Hurry. We arrived back at the show site just as Eddie was doing the closing number. So I never even let Dennis out of the Mercedes. Instead, we headed back to the hotel. Eddie had successfully soloed. Around midnight, after Eddie had had a huge argument with Dennis, who was now sulking like a spoiled child in his room, David came bouncing in as if everything was just fine. Anyone could see that Eddie was pissed. As soon as he discovered that David had arrived, he wanted to call a meeting. By now, a pattern had been established. Eddie called the shots. Dennis followed his leads, and David did what he wanted, often managing to single-handedly overturn one of Eddie's final word decisions. The next morning, Dennis came knocking on my door as if nothing had happened, looking characteristically grand in his gorgeous silk sulka robe. I know everybody's mad at me, baby, he said, laughing. But Tony, you were something last night, he went on. Wasn't I naked? Did anything happen? I knew he was kidding and paid him no mind. Anyway, the man was too old for me. Sure, you're right, I replied, blowing him a kiss. What the fuck is going on here? TT, Let me tell you something, TT. What you're not going to do is make innuendos about the Dennis Edwards. That's what you're not going to do. Because before, remember when Dennis Edwards knocked on the door down there in Texas, you said you had to go in the mirror and make sure that you look good. Now you're trying to tell me that Dennis then came and knocked on his room in a robe looking all grandiose and everything like that. And now he cracking jokes about, I know you saw me naked. Did anything happen last night? What the fuck is going on in here? He still had the New York doll in his room. I've got to get the girl out of there, he said. She's a crack addict. She's terrible, terrible. I want you to go in there. I'm going to stay in your room. You go in there and tell that bitch to get the F out. And you get her a cab back to the city. As I was helping the New York doll pack, Dennis buckled under as expected and decided to let her stay. I went down the hall to see what David was doing. Did that Dennis Edwards sing my songs, he said. And I'm saying in my mind before I read on the next part, what does it matter? Jerry the Mouse could have sang the mother's song. What does it matter for? You weren't there to sing it. Why does it matter? Well, when you're not there, somebody's got to sing them. In fact, Dennis hadn't sang anybody's song because that ninja wasn't there. As long as I'm living, David yelled. I don't want that Muddahunchy singing lead on my songs. Shiz, he uses just as much blow as me. He ain't no better. He's a pretty boy, and that's all. Later that evening, I met David's new girlfriend, Diane, who had driven down from Philadelphia in her Lincoln Continental. Right away, I could tell that Diane was different because how TT describes David Ruffin's women is that he may smoke crack with crack whores. He may, hustle with hustlers. He may, maneuver around a seedy bunch of characters, but his women are always pristine. It kind of reminds me of how Marvin Gaye was with his women. Like he loved the purity of the women, but he wanted to like drag them from that pedestal of purity down to the depths of hell with him. Despite the fact that the first evening show had been 2 temptations short, the reviews were very encouraging. It looked like they might even leave the other temps lying finished in the mud, despite Motown Records and all the hidden muscle that Otis's group had behind it. Of course, those old vicious rivalries still linked both groups of Temptations to the past. Otis Williams had dogged Eddie, Dennis, and David to hell in his bitter 1988 memoir, and Eddie, Dennis, and David in turn blamed just about everything that went wrong on Otis. The first thing they would say when there was trouble was, "I bet you Otis and them is behind this." When the group ended up in one city and their entire stage wardrobe in another, Dennis insisted, only half jokingly, that once again, Otis was up to his old tricks. "I can see people trying to take our money," he said, "but trying to sabotage our clothes." The next show was scheduled for a few weeks away in Philadelphia. If you have not already done so, please remember to like, share to Facebook, subscribe, and visit uptopbeauty.com. Now remember this, the same people that you meet on the way up will always be the same people that you meet on the way down. My naysayers, my patron loves you, babies. Have a good one.